Welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast with Angie Rosier, hosted by Birth Learning, where we help prepare folks for labor and birth with expertise coming from 20 years of experience in a busy doula practice, helping thousands of people prepare for labor, providing essential knowledge and tools for positive and empowering birth experiences.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Doula Podcast. This is Angie Rosier, your host, and I have a special guest here with me today. This is someone I've known for quite a long time, well over 20 years now. A good friend and colleague of mine named Andrea Lythgoe. Andrea is a birth doula, has done that for a long time, childbirth educator, done that even longer. And she has her fingers in a lot of cool things, actually. She's done some work with Lamaze and ICA over the years. And so we're going to talk to her today about childbirth education and how, why, when, where, what in the world would we want to prepare for childbirth. So Andrea, please expound on our introduction of you. Give us a little bit more details about yourself. And then let's dive into our topic.
I have been teaching childbirth classes for about 28 years, and I currently teach in a hospital-based setting. I have also taught independently, and I've done a lot of private classes. I love teaching childbirth classes. In fact, when I decided to make a career change about 5 or 6 years ago, I started thinking, what do I love about what I do? And I realized I'd found myself going down rabbit holes about childbirth teaching, how to be a better teacher, how to communicate things a lot. And it ended up sending me in the direction, and I got a master's degree in instructional design. And now I also do some work designing all kinds of trainings, online trainings, in-person trainings, and those sorts of things as well. So I have a background in that as well.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit about your work with, because you've presented at some conferences, written for some pretty cool journals. Tell us a little bit about that part of your background too.
I have. I've presented at conferences for both Lamaze International and the DONA International in various different conferences. I wrote a website called understandingresearch.com for birth professionals to help understand how to read and understand research. And I have done some volunteer work. I serve on the committee, the Continuing Education Committee for Lamaze. So any continuing education activities that come from Lamaze International or are approved by Lamaze International, I've helped plan and prepare those.
Very cool. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about people that are pregnant. They're getting ready. They're gathering information. What does that look like? Why do they want to do that? Where can they do that? What are the best, quote unquote, best ways to do that?
Okay. Well, let's start first with the why. Why do a childbirth class? In this day and age of the internet, when there's so much information online, why not just watch some YouTube videos, follow some good content creators who talk about birth? Isn't that enough? I think that childbirth classes offer a great deal more than that kind of learning. That kind of learning is absolutely beneficial, and I do feel like parents can and should do that, but childbirth classes will help you fill in any gaps. You don't know what you don't know, and sometimes when you're doing kind of a DIY, let's just watch some YouTube videos here and there, you might miss topics that are important that you wished you had known about. A childbirth class will be more comprehensive and will fill in some of those gaps. They'll help you learn about the birth process. They can, with hands-on practice, help you build confidence in your ability to work with your labor. So that really helps as well. They can also help you learn your options, because if you don't know your options, you really don't have options. If you can't say, well, what if we did this instead? If you don't know that whatever this instead is exists.
Right. So you bring up a good point. A lot of people, I think, get their get their information in bits and pieces, right? They may be looking for it, they may not be looking for it. It just comes across their social media scrolling. So they might think they have a pretty full understanding, but that curriculum, the full curriculum, they're not maybe exploring everything they need. They don't even know they need to explore, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
And a good childbirth class, especially a local one, can help you know what to expect when you come to your birthplace.
Right.
So, uh, as a childbirth educator, even though I'm based in one hospital, I am familiar with what the other hospitals in my area do. I frequently get people coming to my classes who are birthing in other hospitals, who are birthing in a birth center, or who are even planning a home birth. So it's something that I can help them understand what to expect when they get to their birthplace.
Yep. Whereas you're nationally syndicated, if you will, right? Like online
Right.
stuff, they're not going to be as detailed to your region or your facility or your provider as a local provider could
For
be.
local class.
Yeah,
Exactly.
cool. Okay. Awesome.
Um, and because we are familiar with those birthplaces, we can help them learn to navigate the system. And I think that is something that a lot of expectant parents are concerned about. You know, what are the nurses going to be nice? Am I going to be able to speak up for myself? How can I do this? You know, and again, that can help in a childbirth class. That's one of the things I try to help my students be able to learn is how to navigate the system, how to bring up concerns you have, how to discuss risks and benefits and alternatives and all those kind of things with the care provider.
Very cool. Good deal. Okay.
And then
Anything
and then
else
you
to,
also you also meet other people who are in the
yeah.
same stage of life. And that can be helpful as well. And in an in-person live class, you can get your questions answered. If you are watching a YouTube video and something doesn't make sense, you can't ask a question.
Also, like you said with other people might ask questions you didn't know about, right? So you can learn a lot from other class members as well. Like that. And the feedback, the live feedback is vital.
Very, very, very helpful. So I think there's a lot to say for a structured class, ideally a local class, but if that's not one that fits in your schedule or your time or your budget, I think even a more broad national online class is worth your time.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Okay. So that's our why. Um, what about the hows? Or which direction do you want to go next, actually? Like,
Um, I think choosing which class to take sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming.
oh yeah, okay.
So uh, think about things like the class format. Do you want an online class? Would an online class be live or would it be pre-recorded? What options might there be for a pre-recorded class to get those questions answered? Do you want to do a weekend class where you learn everything in one lump weekend? Do you want to do like a series? The class that I teach is 7 weeks long, so you would come every Wednesday night for 7 weeks in my class. Do you want to do private classes where you hire someone to come and meet with you and go over with just you? You could do an in the hospital class, you could do an out of the hospital class. There are pros and cons to both of those, but consider that. Like I said, I teach in a hospital, but I've also taught independently previously. There are pros and cons to both. In a hospital class, I can take my class on a tour. I
Right.
actually, if labor and delivery isn't too busy, I can actually break down the bed and get a student sitting in the bed and show them how to use the bed, how to squat, how to attach the squat bar, all those kinds of things that I was never able to do when I taught independently.
Yeah.
So that's definitely helpful as well.
Very cool. What are some drawbacks to a hospital class?
Um, they vary widely in quality.
True.
So I find that I work really hard to have an excellent hospital class. But I have heard from doula clients who've taken classes elsewhere that they felt like it was more of a how to be a compliant patient class,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So they vary in quality. I would definitely talk with friends. I would talk with um, people who've taken the class. I would look at online reviews and those kinds of things
Yeah.
to try and find a good class that is a good fit for you.
Because I just in our area, I'm aware of some hospitals, and I think you're speaking to this for sure. Like they control their curriculum pretty closely. They don't let their educators talk about certain things, right? They're a little bit hospital biased, I guess we could say. So that might not be just depending on what your birth goals are, right?
Right.
The best course of action for you. So, okay.
Right. And that's not been my case as a hospital-based educator. I don't know that I would have stuck around for the
Yeah.
23 years I've been there if it was.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
So hospital classes, just like independent classes, will vary in quality.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. And then tell me, hospital classes, we know the epidural rate in the United States, and it varies by hospital, by state. Um, just like you said, some of the hospital classes help you be a compliant patient class, basically. But tell us a little bit about hospital classes that prepare you for unmedicated birth or out of hospital birth. Is that possible?
Well, I believe I'm doing it, so I think it's possible.
Absolutely.
My hospital offers the class that I teach, which is a specific class for people planning an unmedicated birth. They call it natural childbirth class. They also offer a shorter length childbirth prep class for people who are planning to use an epidural. It covers a lot less of the hands-on techniques for labor coping. And so they're a little bit different classes. And that's actually one thing I would look at when you're considering a hospital class is I would look at what is the range of classes that the hospital offers. If the hospital offers different styles of classes to meet different people's plans and goals, I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Okay.
And then there's different methods or programs or ways of teaching childbirth. There are organizations that certify childbirth educators like Lamaze, ICEA, and CAPA, where the childbirth educator writes their own curriculum and has a lot of freedom to teach what they believe is most relevant and helpful for the people in their location. And then there are others like the Bradley method, hypnobirthing, hypnobabies, any of the hypnosis type ones, and birthing from within that are more of a set curriculum where the educator has to teach what the organization, the curriculum the organization provides. Those methods tend to be a little bit more of a deep dive into one specific type of coping mechanism. And sometimes the independent, where the educator writes their own curriculum is the same way. Personally, I prefer to teach a broad curriculum. I like to think of my class as more like a buffet. Here's a bunch of different things you could choose for. Find the techniques that work for you from what I'm teaching.
I like that. Yeah.
But some people, like there's a lot of people, they know that relaxation and breathing and mental preparation works really well for them in their daily life. And maybe one of the hypnosis classes is a great fit for their personality, their existing coping, the things they use at day-to-day life, and that works great for them. So the key is to find a class that is a good fit for you. And if you don't know what things you use to cope and what might work for you, then I would suggest looking for a class with a broader range of things.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about so some of the courses you just outlined, like hypnobirthing, hypnobabies. There's several, right? Then as I look at this list over the years, it's hard to keep track of all the different methods there are now.
It absolutely is, yeah.
So how do we find a best method? Like there's some that are tried and true that have changed over years. They've evolved as people's needs have evolved. What are some of your favorites at this point in time? Because it's always going to be changing.
Yeah. It's hard to say if there's a favorite, just because I really believe in the best fit for the right person. So,
Right.
I don't know that any are necessarily better than the others. But one that's been around for a very long time is the Bradley method. It's been around probably since the late 60s, early 70s. It used to be called husband coached childbirth. They've evolved and now they call themselves the Bradley method. And they're pretty in-depth classes. Their classes are 12 weeks long usually, and they talk a lot about nutrition. They talk a lot about relationships. They do a great job of teaching partners how to help, what to say, how to support. In fact, a lot of Bradley classes are actually taught by couples who've been through
Yeah,
labor.
I think that's part, I don't know if it still is, but that used to be part of the requirements to teach is that you actually took the class as a pregnant couple and used the techniques. So I don't know if that's
Yeah,
still the case, but
it's still recommended. I don't know if
yeah,
it's required, but it
yeah.
is still recommended.
But that style might not work for everyone, right? Like that's a
Right.
long class for one thing. A lot of people don't
Very
look
long
into
class.
that
They tend
class.
to be more expensive
Yep.
classes, and not everyone comes to classes with a partner.
Right, right, exactly. And nor do partners really want to be involved that much in many cases, right? Sometimes partners are not that interested in the heavy involvement.
Exactly. And then there's several different organizations that do hypnosis related stuff. There's hypnobirthing and hypnobaby. In our area, we have hypnoactive. Um, we have, several different options. The all of these hypnose classes are based with self-hypnosis and deep guided imagery, mental techniques, things like that, which really resonates for a lot of people and works great for a lot of people. Uh, so there's a lot of benefit to that if that's something that works for you. If you have struggled with breathing in the past, maybe this isn't the best fit for you. So you just need to think about if you know what works for you.
Hmm.
Then there's breathing from within, which is focuses on kind of the emotional and psychological aspects of birth. It's great for people who have a lot of fear about birth to kind of work through some of that fear and help with that. So it can be really good for that. It tends to teach a little bit less of the things like the anatomy, the physiology, the things like that. It's more about your own inner work and
Hmm.
working for that.
Kind of the mental preparation, right? Psychological,
Mhm.
emotional, mental. That's huge, I find, in people's preparation and their success, their perceived success of their
Right.
experience. It's such
However
a,
they define success.
exactly, it's such a mindset, right? Like the
It
mindset you
really
go
is.
in, and some
Mhm.
people find that through education they shift their mindset during their pregnancy. They may want something different for their birth after. Obviously, that's the whole point of education is to discover what they want and what would be best for them for their birth. So
Exactly.
very cool.
And one of the newer ones out there is the evidence-based birth classes. These are for people who have really analytic minds. They want to look at the research. They want to really analyze things and look at risks and benefits and things like that. They are a fairly newer class. I'm less familiar with their curriculum than they are with the others, but it's definitely one that I think would be a really good fit for some people.
Hmm. Absolutely. Very cool. So I'll ask you a couple of questions. One of them, costs. Let's talk about costs between these different methods, whether hospital or private methods. What do we know about costs of things?
Cost is going to vary widely. Hospital classes do tend to be a little bit cheaper because the hospital subsidizes that. Um, and so, that definitely helps. One other benefit to a hospital-based class is because hospitals are already connected with Medicaid. If you have Medicaid, it can help pay for a hospital class. So at my hospital, people who are on Medicaid can take my classes for no charge.
Cool.
And so that really helps cost-wise for a lot of people. Classes that are outside the hospital tend to be more expensive just because the educator has more expenses. They have to rent a place to meet. They have to buy all of the materials, the workbook, the handouts, if they have lotion to practice massage with, all those kinds of things. Everything that's used in class is an expense that the educator has. And so when they're setting prices, they need to cover all of those expenses as well as create some income for themselves. So the out of hospital classes do tend to be more expensive. In our area, there are not a lot of classes through nonprofit organizations, but in some parts of the country, you can find classes through a nonprofit organization. Maybe an organization that works with families, helping families to grow. Early childhood education type organizations sometimes do. So that's another option that you could look at. Those classes, again, tend to be a little on the cheaper side because they are nonprofits. So they tend to have some grant funding and things that might help out with that.
That's true. And there's some community-based classes, right, specific
Mhm.
to certain areas and what needs are. I know there's some, say it's a, a high Hispanic population might have some classes catered exactly to that population, or maybe it's a Black community is going to have classes catered to the needs of their community. So we don't have to just do mainstream, right? We can look at different particular needs of people taking
Exactly.
classes. Cool.
Exactly. And I don't know if they're still doing it, but at one point, the University of Utah had their teen mom program, had classes there specifically for teen moms.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
very cool. And I know there's like classes for multiples, those having twins or triplets, and
right.
we can get pretty specific, right, on different so there's options out there
Yeah.
based on people's needs. Very cool.
Yeah. So when you're looking at how to choose a class, I would start with, what's your goal for your birth? Would you like to have an unmedicated birth? Would you like to use an epidural? What do you want to do? Find a class that will help you to achieve that goal you have. Um, think about what you hope to learn. You know, um, like I said, talk to friends, talk to family, look at online reviews, talk to your care provider, and consider your budget and your logistics, and what time do you have. A lot of the private classes that I have done over the years have been for people who are in professions that don't have schedules that allow for a regular every Wednesday night for 7 weeks. I did probably a couple dozen classes for people who are airline pilots because their schedules are so varied and they can't
Right.
guarantee that they would be there, things like that. So there are options out there that you can make it work. I also for once did a series of childbirth classes at a local, very large employer that hired a lot of people in their 20s. It was a call center, and so I think they had in the valley something like 1,000 employees who were under the age of 35. And so they hired me to come in and do a series of childbirth classes during lunch hour. And
Cool.
everybody would bring their lunch and we'd sit in a conference room. I had, 15, 20 people, and a lot of them did not have their partners there because it was during the workday.
Right. Wow, that's cool.
And we met twice a week for 5 weeks, an hour each time, and they would bring their food and eat it. And it was definitely a different style of class.
But what a
Um,
great way to meet people where they are and provide something on a local level, right? Super
exactly.
accessible to
Yeah.
people. That's
And the
very cool.
company paid for it. And so it worked really
Awesome.
well.
Very awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about logistics.
Mhm.
I want to ask you a question that I think that will come into, but you've taught for a long time.
I
What
have.
kind of shifts and trends have you seen over the last 28 years?
Mhm.
Because we've had a lot of change in the world over the last 28 years, but what shifts have you seen in the childbirth education world? What are our rates like? What's changing, what people want and what they do for about it?
I think especially when social media came out and with the rise of the content creator, I think initially we had a little dip in people coming to childbirth classes, but it seems to be coming back up largely because people have questions and they're getting confused by conflicting things they're seeing online, and they just want to be able to ask questions.
I like that. So that's you bring up a good point because I have noticed with my clients since the rise of social media and influencers and content creators, people come
Mhm.
to me as a doula or to classes that I've teach as well with more information. We don't have to start what is a cervix, what is a uterus, what is an episiotomy. We can start further down the road and get into some deeper material and have those conversations. So people come with more information. Is that true? You think okay.
I think so. I think that's true. I think they also come with more confusion.
Yep. I love that you bring up that point because I think in the earlier days of getting all of or a lot of our information from social media, we just trusted everything, right? But so often now, you probably feel the same thing in your classes or with clients. People say, I went down a rabbit hole, Googled universe, like I got scared, I got confused. They hear conflicting information. And people are strongly opinionated, right? A lot of these content creators are going to be on one side of things or the other side of things. And a lot of us are in the middle somewhere and just want some non-biased information. So you have seen, and I'm glad to hear this because I have definitely noticed a dip in people going to like investing their time and their efforts in childbirth education, but you're seeing an uprise in that.
Yeah, I'm seeing it come back up, I think.
Good, good, good. I
Yeah,
love that.
definitely seeing that. Yeah. And I'm also seeing um, a great deal of influence from TV shows and movies. Every now and then I will hear someone say, oh, there was this scary birth on Grey's Anatomy. And I think, okay, now I got to go watch that episode.
Let's go see what they're talking
I
about.
know I'm going to get questions about it. Um, and I do see that a lot, or I'll hear about a movie. There was a movie a couple of years ago, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, about people's experience with postpartum depression and psychosis.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a movie I was terribly interested in, but I felt like I had to go watch it because I knew I was going to get questions about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Sure
sure enough,
enough.
I did.
That's true.
So that's one thing that I'm trying to kind of stay up on. It's been 23 years since I last had a baby, but I still follow a lot of birth content creators and see a lot of the movies and TV shows and things with births because I know that that is something that my students are seeing and it's impacting how they feel about birth
Right.
and sometimes making them scared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you're talking about in-person classes and the benefit of that, like, well, tell me, like, it seems like a lot of people want to learn from their couch, right? They want to learn in their pajamas. They don't want to have to
Right.
leave the house again that day if they did leave that day. So has that impacted just the how our society shifted with the everything's available online? Do you think that's had an impact as well? Are people willing to come for 7 weeks or 4 weeks or a whole
Um,
weekend?
I think so. I have been pleasantly surprised that over the course of my 7 weeks, I very rarely lose people. I
Yeah,
tend to end with the same number of students that I started with.
cool.
Um, Occasionally somebody will deliver early. That's happened before, but I very rarely have people who just stop coming.
Yeah,
So,
they find
I
value in it.
they find value. That's what
Yeah,
I keep
yeah.
telling myself. I must be doing all right because they're coming back. Nobody's
Keep
dropping
coming
out.
back. Yeah, people are still having babies.
They're still having babies, but they're still coming to my class and
Yeah,
they're still interested in learning. And
yeah,
so
very cool.
that's important to me.
Absolutely. And I know it makes a huge difference. It blows my mind sometimes working with whether patients in the hospital or on the lactation side of things or in childbirth and how little they know or how little they prepared themselves. This is not, it's not the same thing as just going
Correct.
for a dental cleaning. Like there's a lot more moving parts to this.
Yeah,
And like you said, people need to know their options. Like that's valuable to your
mm,
experiences to know your options.
it definitely is.
And a good class will do that. It's cool. Okay, Andrea, anything else to add before we kind of get ready to wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We've had a good conversation here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to wrap up again, tell us, just to recap, um, top benefits why people would want to take an in-person childbirth class.
Giving birth is a very active, hands-on experience, and I think an active, hands-on class is the way to go. I think meeting with other people who are in the same stage of life and connecting with them is useful. And I really want my students to be able to get their questions answered. The questions that people come to me with are very well thought out, interesting questions, and I love that.
Yeah, they're
And
important.
I,
It's important to them.
they're important for them, and I want them to be able to get those questions answered.
Yep, I love that. Cool. It's like you have access again to an expert, right? And your own personal expert for that time. So very cool. Well, hopefully, folks listening to this have learned some of the benefits of childbirth education classes. I, having had 5 babies, I did take a class with every single one. I kind of just treated myself to a class. And I mean, I knew what to expect after a while and had some good
Mhm.
things down, but I still found value in going to, and I did a couple hospital classes, and some private ones too, and just found value in one thing, like carving out time to prepare for this event, right? Like when life gets
Right,
busy and you have additional kids and work, I found it incredibly valuable to really carve out the time that'll quickly go away in 9 months to give,
right,
some justice to the preparation for that. So very
right.
cool. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
And even as a professional doula, I mean, I knew you
Yeah.
with your last 2 births. You were already
Yeah,
working as a professional doula.
exactly.
Even as a professional doula, there's value in carving out time to plan and prepare for your own birth.
Yep, absolutely. And my husband and I, we took a good, I think it was a 6-week series class, our last 2 babies, and it was we had to find babysitters at that point, and but yeah, it was very important to put ourselves in that space of preparation. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, Andrea, thanks for spending some time with us today. Sure appreciate it, and your years of
You're welcome.
expertise. I've always learned so much from you, and love and appreciate your deep knowledge on so many things. So thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, we want to wrap up this episode of the Ordinary Doula podcast, as always, with a reminder to please make a human connection today. That's important. Go out and, whether digitally, in person, physically, like, please connect with someone in your life today. You'll appreciate it, and so will they. Be with us next time. We hope to see you again.
Thank you for listening to the Ordinary Doula podcast with Angie Rosier, hosted by Birth Learning. Episode credits will be in the show notes. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many aspects of giving birth.